Hello, welcome back to my studio. Today we're going to study value and how we can use value to create the illusion of form. So value will be lights and darks, and form is all of those three-dimensional objects out there in the world for us to draw. This morning I have two students with me. I have Mara.
Hi.
And I have Thea. Good morning. So we're going to go ahead and get drawing. So this is the target. This is what we're shooting for. We're going to try and draw a sphere. This is kind of like a classical project where you can study light and how it hits an object. You can see that this one has a very specific light source, and the light source is coming and hitting the top of the sphere on the top left edge. And when it passes through, that angle is sending a shadow down beneath the sphere. So we think of this in two terms. We think of this a lot of times as light and shadow, but it's really not that easy. There are several areas within the sphere. Girls, let's analyze those. So when the light comes this way, this shadow is sent onto the table. This is called a cast shadow. That's a cast shadow. Now, there is a deepest, darkest section of the shadow. Do you see it? Do you see the deepest, darkest section on our sphere? Where is it?
Where the sphere ends and the shadow starts.
Okay, so here's one. There's one spot. And another is this section. There's like a belt line that goes right under the underside of the sphere away from the light. That's called the core of the shadow. Now there's this little sneaky section right here where there seems to be not the darkest, but a little section of light. So what's happening is the light is coming around the sphere, it's hitting the table, and what's happening there? It's bouncing back, correct. Now that area is called the reflected light. Do you know the brightest spot where the light is hitting it the strongest and making it the lightest? The top? Yeah, you do? What's it called? You want to know? You do. It's called the highlight. That's the brightest part of the sphere. And then here it fades from darkest to lightest. This mid-range section with all these middle values, that is called the halftones. They're these middle values. These middle values right in here. Light, dark, and middle on our value scale. So this is what we're going to draw today. To do this, it starts with drawing the outside of the form. The outside of our form is really simple. The outside of the form of a sphere can be simplified to a very simple shape that we all recognize. Obviously, first we're going to draw a circle. Thank you, Thea. So what I found a paint can, and I feel like it's just about the right size. I'm going to trace that. Really quickly. I'm going to pass that to my students here in my classroom. They're going to do some tracing. If you need to stop the video and go find like a Tupperware bowl or something perfectly round that you can trace a circle, if you need to pause, go ahead and do that, and we'll be here. Good job. Thea? So now we have all of our spheres sketched out. We have that basic drawing completed. And we're going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't gotten to this point, again, pause again and go get your tracing materials. So as I analyze the lights and darks here, I'm going to bring this core of the shadow. I think I'm going to choose that as my place to start. A lot of times you build up your values, but here, the way we're transitioning, I feel like it's really good to start with these darkest values here. So what I see when I see that, I feel like I can almost describe a line or see a kind of a boundary to where the core of the shadow is. So if you think of this as a clock, we're going to go from 7:30 on the clock face, and we're going to swoop up and around underneath the center and swoop around to 1:30 or so. Like 7:30, swooping under the center. Up to like 1:30. Yeah, that's good.
This one?
Mm-hmm. So my students in here, one suggestion that I would make here, I would bring this tail up and around, and maybe your arc flattens out here. So I would round that up just a little bit. Mara, yours is good. It's just a little lumpy. You want to watch out for the lumps because the lumps will take it away from the look of a sphere and make it a little bit more like a potato. Usually, I like to pull my line. In this case, I'm pushing my line away from myself. Girls, the core of the shadow, drawers out there, the core of the shadow also has like a bottom sort of edge boundary that I can sort of identify. Maybe I should have blended a little more carefully here. I can identify a line here. So when I'm finished with the next mark, starting here at 7 o'clock, spinning up and under to, I don't know, let's say around 3 o'clock. What I feel like this looks like to me, I feel like I have a Pepsi Cola logo. It looks like a copy of that. So go ahead and draw that second arc. So what do we know about the core of the shadow? The core of the shadow is...
Can I please have an eraser?
What do we know about the core of our shadow now that you have an eraser? The core of the shadow is very dark. So if you're working with the complication of not having the drawing pencils, Mara has a full set, Thea has a full set. If you're working without the complication, with the complication of not having these, that's okay. I'm with you. I'm going to join the fight with you. I have this school pencil that Mara's kindergarten teacher gave her a long time ago. So I'm going to use this to try and wrestle through my drawing. One thing that I've noticed, a really extra super sharp pencil is probably not the way to go. Mine's kind of a little bit worn down and away from that point, because if you have a really sharp pencil, your lines can get very streaky. So if you're working with just a normal pencil, you're going to have to really control your pressure. Girls, you have the drawing pencils. Pencil choice matters. So you want a dark mark. Obviously, what colored pencil are you going to choose?
6B.
The 6B is the one for you. So one little suggestion, I'm going to draw some marks here. I like to make my pencil strokes turn and spin around the curve. Please don't draw these arrows, but when you make your pencil marks, please make yours follow those directions. Like feel like you're twisting and turning around the sphere. If you make little choppy marks, little choppy shading, you might get little transition lines between color to color. If you can, try and go for long, smooth pencil strokes and dark value. I'm just going to slip in here and take my arrows off because those can be very distracting. And let's go ahead and get shading. Let's shade our core of the shadow. High pressure. I'm trying to not let my pencil strokes show. I'm blending, keeping my pencil strokes really tight together. One thing that we'll see that there is kind of a hard shadow on the underside of our sphere. On the underside, there's this little section where everything gets compressed, like the sphere is resting on the table. The light that bounces is not going to find its way in this area. It's going to be relatively dark. So we're going to bring some of that dark value. I'm going to take my pencil, and I'm just going to do some loose pencil strokes, and I'm going to work down around the underside of the sphere. Girls, go ahead and do that with me. Students at home, do that with me too, please. Yeah, you can stick with the 6B. That's a great question. You want that dark value, so that's the one you want. And I think I'm going to exaggerate that right where it's resting on the table. I'm pretty happy with that. Now when I look at my sphere, I feel like the light is cascading down this direction. Now you absolutely do not have to make this mark. I'm just doing this for a reference. Really what I want you to do is kind of relax and eyeball it and just go for it. But what we're going to do next, we're going to move on to our area of cast shadow. Now if I were to analyze my marks on this diagram, I think maybe this left edge, I feel like that angle is off. I feel like the shadow would have been cast wider at the base. So I'm going to go from this area, and I'm going to try and swing out here.
With a lighter pencil?
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter which pencil. I'm just using very light pressure. Wow, that is a very massive cast shadow. I'm going to go with it. With it being that long, it's probably going to get very dispersed out here.
Is it okay if it kind of goes off the page?
A little bit, that's okay. And there's something really sneaky in the model that we use for our drawings. There's always this little flash of light here and here. It looks like there's just a tiny bit of reflected light that sneaks its way onto the table. And I just draw like a little thumbnail arc over here and a little fingernail over here. And now I think we're ready to start shading again. So we're transitioning out of the core of the shadow from the darkest part to a part where it's reflected. Any suggestions on our pencil choice as we do this section here?
Probably like 2H.
That's going way too far. So if we're going from a 6B here, we want to soften up our pressure a little bit, and we want to make our lead a little harder. We're probably going to use a 4B right in this area. Those of you who are working with whatever pencils you have on hand, that's okay. We're going to do it with pressure. Okay, so now we're back. Let's move on to that area of cast shadow. This is going to be the last step that we're going to do in this video, and we're going to come back into a part 2. Part 2 should be really interesting. So we have these areas that we've created. We have this little flash of light.
Is that going to be the same color as the...
So this little flash of light down here, I really softened it up a lot on this diagram. I used a 2B and I press really softly. Now if you're wondering, this pencil is very much like a 2B. It's just a step harder. It's just a step more firm. It takes just a tiny bit more pressure to get those darker values from it than it would be from a 2B. But you can see, I'm trying to make it work. I feel like it's working. I'm pretty satisfied with my drawing so far. Hope you are too. Now as we go across here, we're going to start building up our values, similar to the way we did with the sphere. We're going to use a similar value to what we were using there in the reflected light. Now I'm going to start blending in here. I want to make it just a little bit darker in this area where the sphere would be resting on the table. And I'm going to probably soften it up soften up my pressure down here on the end of my cast shadow. Girls, go ahead and draw. Those of you at home, please join us. Okay, so welcome back. Now we've used a variety of pencils. Today we've gone from 6B, 4B. Some of you might have chosen a little bit of a 2B in this area here. Hopefully you saw some long pencil strokes and you saw this very loose grip as we drew. Some of these things will help you make your drawing a little bit more smooth and your transition of values a little bit more smooth. I hope you had a good time in the studio today. We'll be back next time where we move on to the halftone and the highlight and complete our sphere. Once again, thank you for joining us. Have a good day.